may have mentioned in the previous video about the four Dharma seals, which means four essence of the Dharma, which is law of universe. Actually, this is the view from the human. From the point of view of the law of universe, there's nothing you can talk about because it includes everything. But the human view of how the law is interpreted or digested and processed in our life, I think someone captured this in four key areas. I may have posted the same idea previously, but this is revisiting the whole idea given the situation I'm in. For Dhamma seals, they are one, everything is suffering. It's such a tough one to start with, but let me go one after the other. Why everything is suffering? The way I take it, let's say this is from engineering viewpoint perhaps, is that there's a law of entropy. When everything's left alone, it's going to disintegrate, go back to the chaos. But the sentient beings, we as human, are going against that because we came from the dust of the universe to configure some atoms in certain way over time and created this living being we call human. And over time, I'm here as I am talking to you if you're listening, or anyone is listening. So it's a miracle to me. But given the circumstance we are in and are going against the law of entropy, there has to have some energy and way of processing it. Otherwise, we're going to disintegrate. Eventually, we're going to disintegrate when we die. But while we are living, we go against it. So until that time of death, we work on figuring out how to go over the hurdles, which takes time and energy, a way, a wisdom to go through it. And if we don't, which can happen quite often, as we have realized in our life, each hurdle to go over is like a pain, it's a suffering. So that's what I take, that the life is not that simple. And one other way I can characterize is that it's not everything suffering in a way, because we go suffer, but when we overcome the suffering, we have a joy. So I think there's a cycle of suffering and joy, kind of thing. But overall, since we're going to die eventually, at the end, the law of entropy take over. And that's it. So I think it's very reasonable point as the law. Second one is everything is impermanent. Nothing lasts forever. And I don't think I need to talk about it. But if we assume something, that could be right. But usually we are not as wise, or we, in our mind, cannot think of everything. Therefore, we have to keep working on it. And it's like walking against the current of water, river, or something, and things change all over. So that's just the way it is. So the first is suffering is there. Second is everything changes. The third one is shogyo mujyo, which every act, whatever we do, there is no self. That's what it means. No self. When I communicate, there's me communicating with someone. So we think I exist for that purpose. Or understanding this changes so that there's some entity we call I, or I-entity, ego, or self. But that self, at the end, if you look at the whole situation, there's no tangible self. It's just a fictitious name, so to speak, so that we as individual can figure out what to do. But that is fictitious because at the end, it is emptiness. And this idea of emptiness may not be easy to digest, but if you think about everything is changing, there's no self either. But we create the self for the convention of what to do, which makes sense for me as an identity of mind and body to orchestrate something. But it's a futile effort in a way, because you're going against the current of impermanence, and all the sufferings keep coming. So the way to process this is the law, to say that there's no self. Because if you don't have a self to suffer, then you are figuring out how to process, to go against the current of the changes and the way of how things are manifesting. I don't know if it makes sense, but this idea of emptiness is the sense, if you go over what we think this fictitious self as fictitious, like a dream, then we figure out there's no entity. We have entity in our convention of living in a society and parents and kids and friends to communicate and works and all of that. But beyond that was the notion that I mentioned previously about the wave and ocean. The waves saw the movement of the mind, me, you, what to do, yes, wrong, yes, no, right, wrong, all of that, and to figure out what to do. That's the convention of how we live our life, to go against the entropy, but it's futile because nothing lasts. So from that point of view, the idea of emptiness can be found not in the mind, because mind wants to figure out what to do with this me identity they create, and the future and the past and the learning and how to process it by itself. And with that, the society can improve, evolve. That's the way of nature. But at the end, there's emptiness. It's like the waves are there in the mind, but at the core is a calm, quiet stillness, vast emptiness. So that's the third one. And the fourth is that when we realize that, you find Nirvana. And in there is the calmness, the quietness. And to come with that is the, well, if I can say it, joy of living, being able to appreciate why we are here, what we do, what can be done, but also understand the structure of the me, universe, and the impermanence, no self. So when we have that state, this wave movement of the ups and downs, suffering and joy, and all the social dream, convention, movies, up and down, and maybe every now and then some wisdom and enlightenment, and because of that we have some compassionate feeling of sharing what can be done. So that's the phenomena in the society. But the down deep, when we have the calm and quiet mind, still, or you can call it no mind, that's the enlightenment, awakening of who we are. And with that, we appreciate more of our being and see the truth of what's going on. And in there, you can call it a joy or blissful sensation that you can identify with what's going on in the universe. And that's Nirvana. So to me, that's the structure in the process. And with that understanding sort of behind as a background of our living, because we have the social life to go process this and that, but have a foundation of how the universe is functioning, the process of suffering as a natural event, accepting it, everything changes, and no self, and have that enlightening sense. In my case, I see that and I feel that nirvana, but it may not last long because there's lots of movement in my mind. But underneath there, and that's the really is the effort where I am in, and that shouldn't be the effort because it has to be natural, just following the law of nature, to see that that's the structure, that's what's happening, so you accept whatever there is. While as human in the society, to try to do this and that. I think I have a sense of resolution with that, even though this suffering, impermanence, waves, changes, hurdles come and go. You may, as I call it, ride the wave of the universe and appreciate whenever we can. And when we suffer, we just resolve the state of being, accepting it, and let the nature to take care of itself, not the self, no self. So ride the wave of the universe. We may fall, but we can come back and ride.